Alright, another week, another awesome episode of Kino's Journey. Wait, this isn't Kino. This is,
名前何でしたっけ？
right, Shizu. Okay, so this week we're going to watch another episode of Shizu's journey at. Since when did Kino ever feature other characters in the way that it has? Almost never. And this week's episode was a sound departure from what I'm used to when I tune into Kino's. I guess this makes a lot of sense to why the Colosseum arc was introduced so early, so that we also have leeway to follow new characters. And I rather really enjoyed following Shizu for the most part of the episode. It really brought another perspective into the world that Kino inhabits. Kino herself may be mostly passive and mostly a silent observer, but Shizu isn't. He deals with the issues head on and is proactive, completely opposite from Kino. And I think his character in particular is quite fascinating, especially with the type of story we got this week, which is all about finding a place to belong.
向こうの大陸に私たちが落ち着いて住める国があればいいな。
From the last time we've seen him, we know that he'd been abandoned from his family. He'd essentially become this runaway orphan, and after seeing his father die, he really did become an orphan. I'd say that in this, he became abandoned by his country and by his own family. You could also argue that he abandoned his family and country, and that it was all his own will to be alone. He did come back for revenge, but after it was done, he could have just stayed around and took over. But he didn't. So he wanders, wondering where he'll go next. And it's this listless wandering that I find really interesting in him as this pseudo-traveler. Kino, who travels, does so seemingly without purpose. She never really gives a concrete destination, but travels anyway. She finds the act of it like a bird and enjoys being free, but Shizu has his own reason. It's this want of belonging, to find a place to settle, that I find holstering Shizu forward. And this allows us to see that these two people are going to find the world different. It lends itself to allow for two different perspectives, as these two people are wandering with two different goals. Shizu says that he wants to be a commoner because he's humble, but I think it also extends a little more than that. In his words, to want to be like a commoner is, for me, his own desire to want to live a quiet life. And after his revenge had been enacted, he really doesn't have much of a goal. It's like being a hollow in Dark Souls. You lose grasp of your humanity once you lose sense of your goal. Except Shizu doesn't lose all sense of his goal, because he immediately finds himself wanting to belong. He sets himself another goal, and he won't really find peace if he doesn't lower his own status and pretend to be this passive, nonchalant traveler. But even so, even if he does manage to find a place to belong, what then? This all to me is just him making excuses and running away from his past life as much as he can. And this is mirrored in the ship country. Everybody here has a place they belong. It's their country through and through, and I think that no one can admit the faults of the country or believe Shizu because they wouldn't have anywhere to go. Why would they suddenly dismiss their entire livelihood like that? They wouldn't. It's too bothersome. But this isn't a bothersome country, it's simply a ship country drifting along. No matter your situation, finding a place to belong is better than being alone. I think this is why we hear so much stories of people who can't seem to find courage to break out of situations that don't seem all in their favor. It's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, if you will, but I'm no expert. People in abusive relationships, for example, or people who are in a job or a community that they don't particularly enjoy or are experiencing some kind of discrimination, usually would want to stay in those places. For as tough as it is being an outsider or experiencing hardship in a community or job, it still gives you a place to belong. It still gives you a place to go, purpose even. That's why the ship country citizens are so easily angered and won't believe a word that Shizu says. Why leave that security? Why leave that life that has given you a weird sense of belonging, that comfort? I mean, seriously, in all morals, it's probably better to leave. For the ship country citizens to basically be sitting on their deathbeds happily is just plain wrong. But I can't assume their morals. Neither can Shizu. This is their own atonement for being brought up in this environment and only knowing the ship country. It's not necessarily their fault, but they have to deal with it. They can't just up and leave, and so they ignore, and in using this ignorance is in their own way running from the truth. But it's worked for them. Shizu, on the other hand, is in this sad cycle. He's the one who doesn't belong in any place, and yet here he is trying to help others by unknowingly stripping their place in the world. it's kind of hypocritical. One of the main reasons that I find Kino to be so passive most of the time is because she understands that she really shouldn't be mingling into affairs and pushing her political views on people. She isn't some saint here to cleanse the world. The very fact that this world is so strange and distraught that it's beautiful. Let's not forget the tagline. So now we have Shizu, who doesn't really understand this and is hurt because of it. Even if he were to actually usurp the king of his old country without Kino's help, he's essentially changing the way of life for everyone around him. It's these same people who were completely fine with the way things were, but he doesn't get the privilege of doing that. He doesn't get the privilege of being some kind of weird king and god. You could say that Kino kind of saved him in this way, but even so, he manages not to let that get to him and leaves. I think even if he were to kill the king, he'd probably just leave and not take the country for himself. And this does leave him in a weird cycle, as I said. He does exactly the same thing here, and after seeing the state of the country, he's left in pain again. As much as he wants to belong and he wants to find a place to belong, he sure doesn't know what that actually looks like. He fails to see that these people do belong, and that's why he kind of got stabbed in the end. I call it a cycle, but we'll have to see where he goes, and if he makes the same decisions to try and force solutions. But whatever he does, I don't think matters much anymore. His purpose of traveling was to find a place to belong, and that's all fine and well, but I think he's already lost sight of that anyway, and that he never really understood what he wanted in the first place. If he really wanted to find a place to belong, he would just suck it up and take the country and rework it in any way he wanted. So why doesn't he? These actions aren't from someone who wants to find a place to belong. Again, it feels like he's just running away from his problems. So I'd like to guess that his stories from now on, if we are going to be seeing more of Shizu, which I actually really hope we do, are going to really flesh out his character and his reason for traveling. I don't think he should be so adamant on settling down, but to just have fun in traveling now that he has literally nothing better to do. And of course, he has a companion now, an abandoned companion that now has found her place to belong with Shizu. And likewise, Shizu does have a place to belong, and it's with her life and protecting her. So if anything, he does actually have a place to belong. He's found it. But I wonder how long it'll take him to realize that. In the end, traveling and going forward shouldn't always have this cut and clear purpose. Once Shizu finishes his goals, he's just going to be depressed again until he fills his time with another pointless endpoint. And that's how a lot of people are. They just keep filling their lives with these arbitrary goals to push them forward. But you don't need to do that. You should just enjoy the journey. It looks like my prediction for the next episode isn't going to be a much beloved Kino backstory. I actually find this a really interesting approach, and I wonder when they are going to drop that on us. But this show has been throwing me for loops in all kinds of good ways, so I'll happily accept their stance on this adaptation. If you liked what I said here, then be sure to check back when we don't get Kino's backstory next week and see if we actually have other characters in the mix again. That'd be really cool. Anyways, I'm Brian, see you later.